Welcome to Dark Truths, Religion Uncovered, where forgotten teachings surface like old bones through soft earth, and faith reveals its layers, one revelation at a time. Tonight, we journey into a doctrine once whispered by prophets, analyzed by scholars, and embraced by mystics, but then forcefully erased by the rising hierarchy of the early church. It's the idea that the soul is not bound to one life, but to many, that existence unfolds not as a single straight line, but as a spiral, an ever-returning breath, moving through ages and bodies toward a completion we can barely understand. The earliest Hebrew mystics called it Gilgal, the rolling of the soul, a migration from one vessel to the next. They taught that a just God could not bind eternal consequences to a single lifetime of accidents, wounds, or tragedies. If suffering arrives at birth, then justice must extend beyond birth. Even Jesus' disciples hinted at this when they asked, "Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" A question that only makes sense if the soul lives before the body. Yet early Christian thinkers, like Origen, brilliant, fearless, and later condemned, taught that souls existed before creation, descending into flesh to grow, to remember, to evolve. And Gregory of Nyssa speculated similarly, that the divine image in us required many purifications and many transformations, because one life simply could not hold the full journey of becoming what we were meant to be. But the rise of a centralized church required more control, and reincarnation offered too much freedom. A soul that returns cannot be threatened. A soul that evolves cannot be owned. So, in 553 CE, the Second Council of Constantinople condemned Origen's teachings, and with them the doctrine of rebirth. History was rewritten by decree. The spiritual imagination of millions was forcibly narrowed to a single lifetime and a single judgment. Yet the echoes remain. Across the East, reincarnation persisted not as superstition but as metaphysics. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism all teach that the soul learns slowly, painfully, and beautifully through multiple incarnations, weaving through lives like threads seeking a final tapestry. And in Judaism itself, Kabbalah preserved the teaching in secret, passing it through the Zohar and later Hasidic sages who claimed souls returned to complete what was left undone, to repair what was broken. But let us ask the deeper question tonight. Why does the idea of many lives frighten institutions? Perhaps because it dissolves spiritual fear. If one lifetime is not your only chance, the theology of threat collapses. Salvation becomes growth, not a transaction. Punishment becomes correction, not eternal torment. And the divine becomes a teacher, not a judge. Let's imagine a God who allows the soul to return as many times as needed to perfect compassion, wisdom, courage, or love. And imagine that your greatest wounds in this life might echo from another, not as punishment, but as a chance to heal what once cracked you. Imagine that the strangers who feel familiar are in fact familiar souls you have walked beside before. Modern science doesn't solve the mystery, but it whispers around the edges. Children recalling lives they've never lived, memories without origins, phobias with no cause, talents with no teacher. And neuroscience can't explain why certain people feel ancient, as if carrying centuries in their eyes. Maybe the soul is older than we admit. Maybe the divine expects more from us than a single brief attempt at existence. If the soul truly returns, then life is not a test but a curriculum, one crafted by God with infinite patience. Death becomes transition, not failure. Judgment becomes a reflection, not a sentence. And heaven becomes not a final destination, but a resting place between lessons. The question is not whether reincarnation is true. The question is, does a God of justice make more sense in one life, or many? So tonight, we end with a thought that has haunted mystics for centuries. If the soul forgets its past to learn anew, then perhaps salvation isn't about remembering God. It's about God remembering us through the long journey home. Thank you for joining Dark Truths, Religion Uncovered. Share your thoughts below. Now ask yourself, does the soul live once, or does truth require more than one lifetime to reach? If you found this journey thought-provoking, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next revelation.